Ladies and gentlemen, ears of corn all over the internet and indeed the world, welcome to the Corn Chronicles. The search continues. Tonight, these bearded brothers in front of you are not twins, but I am joined by the one and only Mr. David Kramer. Mr.
Thank you.
Kramer, thank you so much for joining me tonight. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm doing really well. Thank you for asking.
Man. To many who will be watching this, Mr. Kramer is a man who needs no introduction, but just in case, just speaking from my own perspective, I spent well over 6 years of my life getting to know Mr. K um, as my drama director. I don't think I ever had you as an actual teacher, which is pretty harrowing when you think about it. But certainly in 6 years' time, one of the most incredible extracurricular experiences any person could ever ask for. And I remember very distinctly saying, very naturally, my senior year, I was president of that drama club. And I just kind of said it because I meant it. Like, I didn't consider it very profound. I just kind of said, certainly next to my own parents, I can't think of a person who's had more of a paternal influence on my life. And yes, I was still speaking that way back in 12th grade. But I remember after I said that, everyone was like, "Oh, that was beautiful." And I'm just like, "What was?" But but no, it is very truly my honor to be speaking with Mr. K today, and I'm really excited to speak with him a bit, share some memories, but mostly just kind of get to know him. Just kind of get his perspective on things. So thank you very much for being here. Sir.
Sounds great. I'm very excited. And although I'm not saying this to say that I did anything that would warrant Newsday headlines, but I'm sorry for anything I might have done to you while you were my student. I say that to every former student.
Largely good memories, sir. The others have been repressed. No, nah. Honestly, my pleasure, my honor. Mr. Kramer, it'd be easy to start with theater and just kind of jump into that. But as much as I have no doubt, and I can't put this into words effectively, but as much as theater, I'm sure, is a passion for you, to put it very mildly. Um, to my mind, at least in getting involved with the Miller Place High School program where I know you from, the gateway to that is always teaching. Can you tell me kind of where your interest in teaching came from and kind of your motives for wanting to kind of impart knowledge on future generations?
Okay, I guess it's an interesting story. When I was growing up, I studied music in New York City in Greenwich Village with a young woman. Her name was Joan Tower, and Joan Tower was a pianist and a 20th century composer. She was probably the person that had the greatest influence on me relative to a career. And I was a composer myself. I wrote my Valentine song to my mother when I was 7 years old on a toy wooden piano, and was a composer studying composition with actually a teacher who came into the city once a week, Isaac Nemiroff, who taught out here at Stony Brook University, and he taught me composition, and Joan taught me piano. And eventually, we would do 5 recitals a year, and at the end of the year, there'd be a party at her apartment, and I found out that she was married to a jazz musician, a jazz pianist, and performance was music was something that was very special to me. But as nerve-wracking as performance was for me, and it was, you never wanted to be the first one at a concert to make a mistake.
Yeah.
I had that internal pressure, but composition was really the direction that I wanted to go. And when Isaac Nemiroff left that position in Greenwich House Music School, I then studied under Joan because she was a composer. And as it turned out, she's like world class now. I mean, she's won Grammy Awards amongst other things. She's was feted with with a Ford Company award where she has her pieces played in every state in the union, as much as the union is now.
Yeah, well.
Right, but we won't get into that. Her picture is on the wall of Geffen Hall. She's slated for commission of a world premiere at the New York Philharmonic next year. And her idols, as were mine, and still is, Beethoven and Stravinsky. So we had, in fact, Stravinsky wrote something called Petrushka, which is about puppets that come to life. It's a ballet from 1911. And Joan wrote a piece of music called Petrushkates, as opposed to Petrushka. So, I mean, there was that combination. So I went to Queens College as a music major and expected to become a composer, a starving composer, because Joan Towers and Hodds, her husband's name, their apartment was it's a one-room apartment.
Sure.
With a grand piano was larger than the bed, kind of thing. And her students would get together once a year, and I idolized her. She was the starving composer that I wanted to be, because as a classical musician, not writing like Mozart and show tunes or Broadway, writing really avant-garde music with smell-o-vision and all sorts of other things. There wasn't a big market for it, even though it was the contemporary way of writing. So with that being said, I went to Queens College as a straight music major, and then I met my wife.
Wow.
And I realized I had to put food on the table.
Sure. Yeah.
So putting food on the table was a big deal. So I switched over and added the education side to music education and realized that that's what I wanted to do. And I don't know really where the idea of sharing came from. But once exposed to doing it, it became self-reinforcing. And so, not that it validated, but the feelings of fulfillment at seeing someone grow and being not the person who poured the knowledge in, but the person who was the catalyst to the acquisition.
To spark it in them, I would think.
Yeah, as a spark to them, as a catalyst for them having the revelation of something new.
Yeah.
And so the art of teaching was a transfer of the art of teaching, which involved creativity of how to get across an idea, many times through analogy, backtracking, and then adding something new to see that spark go off in whether it's a kindergartner or a high school student's head or just someone who I'm talking with. That was the transfer of the desire to create, because I created lessons. When I went to Miller Place, there was a curriculum that was solely skill-oriented, even from first grade on. There was no kindergarten. And music had just come back to the district the year before I was hired, and it came back in '74. It had been canceled, it had been excessed for 4 years. And so the curriculum was there was nothing creative in a sense, except that I was going to be creating the alphabet and then teaching words and it was just language oriented, which is sequential, which is not what creativity is all about.
Not at all, yeah.
And what any of the art forms are. There's a lot of simultaneity reflective of life. And so I was able to shift the curriculum, especially when I got to middle school, into a more humanities kind of approach, and giving music and pieces of music context, or how they've influenced or been influenced from society, technology, and historical events. So I guess the creativity as a composer that I had very early in my life just morphed into another creative output. And and the ideal profession for that was teaching, because you get to create the lessons and you have a captive audience who can't escape unless they want to get suspended.
Right.
Except for the extracurricular, which puts more pressure on me.
Right. It's got to be on point. No, I'm sure it was. Um, I wanted to start with kind of your road to teaching because it very much, still to this day, and I say this with reverence. It's not going to sound like it, but it really. But I say this with so much love and respect because those from 7th to 12th grade, those times that I spent in those theater groups, they were my family. It was a lot of time spent, a lot of sweat, a lot of terrible dance moves. Uh, you know, um, they were my family, and I loved it, and I wouldn't trade it. But I still don't necessarily consider myself that much of a theater person, as much as you might want to put something that broad in a box. And when I look back on my time, like I think about like just BSing with Matt Matura. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's definitely those like very much like kid memories. Don't get me wrong.
Mhm.
But really, what resonates with me, at 31 years old at this point, are always kind of how there were lessons within the lessons, and that all came from you. I think I think that there was never a point, other than maybe like the literal first day where we would sit with the scripts and read them. There was never a point where it was just like, where your line's at. You know what I'm saying? And there was never a point where it felt like almost not until Hell Week were we actually talking about like blocking and entrances and things like that. And obviously that's me exaggerating, just to kind of make a point. But it always felt like what you were really there to do is learn about life through the form of, a theatrical piece, and then, make some memories and friends while you were doing it. Would you say that's a fair assessment? Can you speak to me, because I don't know. Do you think that's something that is common in theater programs then and kind of now, or is that something that you made it a point to say, like, I know this is not the norm, but this is what's important to me?
No, I think it's very common. My wife is making signals to me. She cuts me off when I do my speeches at drama dinners, and so she's my presentation coach. She's my director. No, when you have a connection with an art form, I never know I didn't know early on what drove me. I had no theater background.
Sure.
None. My classic stories were, because my whole life is just a bunch of stories.
Yeah, well, mine too.
I'm sorry. So when you run out of time and you want to go to bed, you let me know. In second grade, I was the letter N in a United Nations Day play, and I was the lowercase n in the United Nations. And the next time I acted was at a sleepaway camp where Perchik quit the day of a performance in Fiddler on the Roof, and they asked me to do it because I could carry a tune. I didn't sound good, but I could carry it correctly.
Yeah.
And so I had to learn the entire part in one day and then go on that night.
Yeah.
And needless to say, I have no memory now, and I had no memory then. So they pasted all my parts on tables, backs of trees. When I sang Sunrise, Sunset, my Perchik line, it was on the back of the person who was now blocked in front of me, so that I could not make a complete fool of myself. So I had no background in theater. But when I was in my master's program, I studied a book called Music Education as Aesthetic Education by a man named Bennett Reamer. And he talked about aesthetic perception in any art form. And we also studied a book called Problems in Art by Suzanne Langer, who dealt with visual art and language. And they said the bottom line was that in dealing with arts, you're dealing with something that is reflective of the human condition. The simultaneity of elements going on and changing at different degrees of intensity at different speeds is what goes on in life, because it's not just one thing going on, it's many things coming at you that you're dealing with at any given moment. And so when you develop aesthetic perception, you then increase your ability to become aesthetically sensitive. And in life, when you deal with people or deal with moments, and you build your perception, for me, through the arts, you begin to see things in life that you can are an internal catalyst to reflection. So with that in mind, when I composed, although I stopped composing once I became a teacher, there was just no time for that. No longer was I manipulating sounds, or notes, I should say. But again, ultimately they're sounds. And so when I was given an opportunity to do theater, and I started in the North Country Road School, about middle school I started in the primary school when I had a third grade chorus, and I thought, because music teaching was a very risky profession, it might be accessed any year when there's a conservative budget being put out. I thought that if I created student plays and integrate my chorus, I would be able to be better liked and thereby save my job. Although it's a seniority thing, there's no way you save your job no matter how much you like. You know, it's all a monetary thing, a contractual thing. So I did things like Melvin the Magnificent, Dragon Tales. Then I moved up to Bambi and Wizard of Oz. And then eventually I was able to get into the Gifted and Talented program that was big in the early 80s. And I did plays in the Sound Beat School, which was then a 4 to 6 building. And we did a student playwriting workshop where I would teach writing. And from that workshop, which worked in the fall, we would find 3 plays to produce. I might have had 10 kids in the writing workshop, and they had to be labeled gifted and talented through whatever criteria that administrator had. And then we would take 3 of the plays and audition kids, and if I said this kid's an actor in a sense, they became gifted and talented. They became labeled, because there was no criteria for that in the school documents about how do you label gifted and talented kid. They were reading scores and math scores and whatever social skills, but nothing in terms of theater. And then I created a director stage managers workshop that trained kids to be directors and stage managers. And so 3 theater companies were created in the spring that put on 3 of the plays. Now, when I got to high school, a number of those kids that came out of that program they were talented and they kept involved, and they became my very first actors in the high school theater program. And some of the people, I mean, I had my Wizard of Oz, my Peter Pan in middle school. She runs a theater house in New York City, and her daughter was one of the Matildas, one of the first 4 Matildas that were on Broadway, and she was on a Beyonce or Rihanna. Who? Hillary? You won't remember.
Yeah.
Okay, but a Christmas Hallmark special that was. She grew up in Huntington. We don't know who she. Okay, Mariah Carey. Okay.
There you go.
She was in a Christmas special with Mariah Carey. So I mean, people who have that interest in or perception of the human condition, if they really have it, I think they want to share it.
Yeah.
It's not, and so really that was the start of it. So it goes back to wanting to be a starving composer, and it goes back to my mantra in terms of theater people is on stage, and what you said relative to your experiences, that my job as a theater person is to try to get my actors to be real in imaginary circumstances.
Yeah.
That's become my mantra. So if you can be real, it opens you up to being sensitive and empathetic to people who are living that in not the reality of the stage, but the reality of real life.
Yeah.
And if you can, if you can eliminate the idea that you're on stage, as you could do as well as you did, which is why your father in Ragtime was as powerful as it was, and your marriage ceremony in Tommy was legitimate. They were married, you know. It was love at first sight for Chucky, that kind of thing. So that's where it comes from. I don't know where it comes from, but it's something that I think I've done well, but I made a lot of mistakes along the way too. But I self-evaluate. You know, when you practice, when you practice an instrument and you make a mistake, you either, as you're practicing, forget about performing, practicing, you make a decision. Am I going to go back and try to correct it, or am I just going to go on and ignore it?
Right.
And I was the one who said, if I don't do it 5 times in a row, that measure, and then go back 2 measures and do it 5 times in a row, and if I don't do it 5 times in a row, I go back to 0. I was one who wanted to correct myself.
You bet. Well, I mean,
I only learned 3 pieces of music in my life.
Yeah.
And I'm still playing them. No, I'm kidding.
Well, if you listen to me play the ukulele for about 5 minutes, you'd be telling me to go back.
Oh no, I have watched you play that ukulele, and I am duly impressed. And actually, I have a better appreciation of the general music classes where they give ukuleles out as an instrument, because it does give that performing component and creative moments to these kids. And I do have a lot of you deserve a lot of credit for what you do.
No, I mean, shoot, it's a great instrument.
Yep.
One, it's only 4 strings, and it doesn't beat the hell out of your fingers, if I'm being honest.
There you go.
That was it. That was really it. I really can't even lie, because I would have stretches where I would like pick up the guitar, and believe me, like it never really gained traction. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that, but whatever traction I did have, it would just be like, oh, okay, like, but I'm busy with this for now. And it's not the kind of thing where you can, unless you're like going to callous yourself up,
right?
You really like, if you pick it up too late, it's very hard to pick it up.
Right.
Which is why the ukulele was really a dream come true for me. And while we're shouting out people, I got to give Jason Kaplan all the credit in the world for getting me started with that. Man, what a guy. I'm sure he would say hello too, by the way. So I want to make sure to say that.
Okay.
So one of the things that I always considered very special, and this is one thing that I can speak to, is the diversity of personality within those Miller Place high school programs. At least during my time there, I'm not going to pretend to be well versed on certain things after a couple years after I left. But anyone who wanted to be on stage could be on stage.
Yep.
And one, I think that's a tremendous way to organize something like that when there's so much to learn from theater, regardless of what your titled role is. I will say to you, because you're the only person that it would probably be appropriate to say this to, I think the role that I played that I'm most proud of was when I was the torchbearer in Pippin for that summer program. Because to my mind, it was me taking something that didn't have much on paper, which was deserved and all that. I don't mean anything like that. But it was just kind of saying, like, okay, well, this is what's on paper. Here's what I'm going to do with it.
Right.
And, you know, like, believe me, I have memories of all of them, and we're not going to turn this into an interview of me by any stretch of the imagination. But my point is, over a decade later, I can point to certain things in Godspell and Ragtime and Aida and say, like, yeah, man, that was special. You know what I'm saying? But, like, when I think about the man that, ooh, I hate the third person thing, but the man that Tom Policastro has become, like, I think more on moments like that, moments like I'm holding this fake flame. I just pop out two times.
And you come out and you make your entrance from stage
Yeah,
right.
exactly. Yeah.
You got that
And
look to the audience. Yeah, if I remember.
yeah. So no, again, I'm not gonna make it about me. That's not.
Oh, but that moment was.
Yeah.
No, that moment was about a flamethrower.
That's right. That's exactly
It
what it
wasn't
was.
about you. It wasn't about you either.
We're gonna light something up. No. Can y'all see all right? No. All right. No, but to my mind, what that always did for me, in a poetic sense, it put characters in the role of characters for me, because it was a very just diverse group of people,
Yes.
personality-wise, and in a not so poetic sense, it made me want to stick with it. And I don't think there was ever a real situation didn't where I didn't want to be a part of that program. But what I loved about that program is you had moments where I could walk over to Sean Gallagher and talk about basketball, you know, and then I could hop over to Leanne Maloney and just talk about music. And then God knows Maddie and I were on our own gosh darn thing. And that's a different talk altogether, to be honest with you. And I love Maddie. You know, Maddie's my dear friend to this day.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just this collection of people with like a common vision in making the show all, you know, as good as it can be. But it was also just everybody bringing something different to the table.
Right. It was very diverse. Yeah.
And I went to college, and I never really had much of a desire to major in theater or anything like that. I realized that to have success in that field, you know, you kind of had to be like a triple threat, which I wasn't. And I don't regret a thing about it. But even when I tried to get involved in college, it was very different because I found in college that people like seeking theater out were often very much people that didn't leave the stage on the stage. And it was very much like they were always kind of on a little bit. And I was a little more just like, if we're performing, cool, like let's perform. And then if we're not, it's like, so what are we doing after this? You know what I'm saying? And I'm always very grateful to the Miller Place High School program, and which of course all stems from you, was the diversity of that group, which to me taught me more than, and entertained me more, just straight up had me laughing and more memories than pretty much any more kind of formal or strict theater program ever could have done. Was that always kind of your goal, to let anyone, you know?
The goal was to give everyone an opportunity. Absolutely. And but for it to be successful experience, everybody had to be able to, because it was finite, to be closer to the end of what was here relative to the final product.
Yeah.
In terms of casting. And so to me, it was, the hardest thing was validating people that were ensemble people who wanted to be leads, kind of thing,
Yeah.
and level out those people that no matter where you were placed, you were a full-blown member of the society.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. As I was retiring, I got letters from people, and at times, people sent me reflections of their experience, and the people that were ensemble people their whole lives relayed their disappointment at times of not being cast the way they wanted, but an understanding that they still felt fully involved.
Yeah.
Because the play doesn't exist and life doesn't exist without the entire community existing. Now, sometimes they are anti-forces. I understand that, as opposed to pro an idea. But when it comes to you can pass or fail your math tests and nobody will know but your teacher, your parents, if you tell them, and yourself. But in theater, you put your ass on the line in front of a lot of people. And so my goal is was always to prop people up, make them more secure, make them so secure that the nerves, as you're walking up the back steps to call, dissipate, because you've done it so much it becomes automatic. Because I'm sure 98% of the people walking up those stairs who had lines, they were threatened internally that they wouldn't remember them all. And how am I going to get the first word out?
Yeah.
Now, how do I know that? Because that's the way when I walked up 3 steps onto the stage at Greenwich House Music School as a kid, that I don't remember the first note and there's no music on the stand. What do I do? And my teacher always characterized me when I would sit down to the piano at a concert. She said, David, you always look like you were sitting down to a 5-course dinner. In other words, somehow when I sat on that bench and I saw the keys in front of me, this was a reality that I was so comfortable with.
Yeah, man.
That I was able to execute almost perfectly every performance, but never perfectly any performance.
Right.
Which I guess, now that I think about it, since it happened to me, it gave me permission to allow other people to make mistakes also. And in Tommy, I mean, there was one dreadful mistake that I made in not seeing, that I realized like in the 4th performance that I changed.
Oh dear. Okay. Is it bad that it's not popping out to me?
No, it wouldn't happen to you. It was when Tommy was facing Danny Rung in the one-way mirror.
Yes.
And before the light went off, and Ray Walter walked away, and Danny went behind the black curtain that was part of that mirror box.
Yeah.
But the light hadn't gone off yet, so we saw him walk behind it.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And this is relative to you. My failing was at one point in ragtime in your final handshake with Colehouse Walker in the library.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until like a 2nd, 3rd performance that I because I had my head buried in a master cue script that I was calling.
Sure.
I never saw the position of hands between you and Ray when you let go.
Yeah.
That when I saw it, I said, we need to take that to another level, and I changed it backstage for the next performance. I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
But that kind of thing, it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the nature of live performance, but that's what makes it great.
Yeah. So as I said, the ability for me to recognize that I'm not perfect, as much as I try to strive towards perfection, that's also a mantra that I have to my theater productions now. That's what I'm looking to do. Is you don't have to be you can't be 110%. Anybody says you got to give 110%. How can you give 110%? 100% maybe, but never. You can't. You can't, because as soon as you give 100% and you're satisfied with that 100%, that's the moment you backtrack.
Yeah. Okay.
You move backwards. You always have to strive to be better. So let's do this tomorrow night, and I'll answer the questions better.
Indeed. I'll splice them together, I'm sure. One person who's very near and dear to my heart, but the reason she is not on the show is because I'm concerned that she'll remember my dancing a little too well, and there are certain things I don't want public. Would be Miss Jean. Can you tell me a little bit about how you and she connected professionally, and what kind of? I mean, the truth is,
can. Oh, you want me to talk about?
You want to take it from there would be great.
Yes.
Yeah. What's that?
When no, I'm going to tell you the story. The story is basically you froze there for a minute. There was a theater in St. James called Take One Theater, and in that theater, are you still with me?
Yes.
Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because your picture is frozen a number of times. No. Okay, so there's Take One Theater, and we had someone who we knew that we went down to. It was a black box theater, very small stage. It was actually a complex near the mall, and we went to see a play of Peter Pan, Annie. Okay. Oh, this was Sarah Drew. Is this? No, this isn't Sarah Drew. Right. Okay. So my I got the whole story, the beginning of the story from my wife. So a friend of my daughter, Lisa, was in the show, was in Annie, and we went to see it, and we were very impressed with the performance, and so we decided to enroll, I guess, Lisa wanted to audition. It was a community theater. You paid a fee and you auditioned. They were good enough, and very young at the time. She became part of what show? Wizard of Oz. Okay, so she was Lullaby Lady, right? She wasn't Lollipop. She was that's a male part. So she was in the Lullaby League. And then she was 7 at the time. I'm gonna get Hillary in my ear the whole time telling her. And then the next play they did was Miss Jean was the choreographer in 6 or 7 school districts at the time, and worked with the theater director, who was probably also, I don't know if he was just theater, but Ted Castrinos in Comac School District, or whether he was a theater or an English teacher. And she was there, and then in Peter Pan, my son Ari played John or Michael, and Eliza played whatever she played. And during one, I had just done Peter Pan, or was doing Peter Pan at Middle Place High School, and the second pianist in the pit was out, and that meant there was no Tinkerbell, there was no second piano player. And I said, if you want, I can do it. I mean, it won't be great, but because I wasn't the pianist, I wasn't the music director of that show. That was somebody at the high school, and I just directed. I said, I can fake it. It'll be fine. Yeah. And after that, I got hired by the company to do Shenandoah was the next play, where my oldest was in that play because he was a tenor, and I worked for them a good many years. So I worked at rehearsals with Jean and with Ted Castrinos and myself. We were always there, and we developed a relationship there. She also worked for Theater 3. And then I eventually became a second pianist for Ellen Mitchell Moore, the music director of Theater 3. And so I was around her often. Then it turns out in 91, I came up to the high school and I had a parent in the district who was actually a Miss Connecticut and a very talented theater person and dancer. And she was a Miller Place resident. She choreographed for my very first show at the high school, which I didn't want to do a Broadway show because I didn't want to be compared to anybody who had worked in the director's position before. So I did a show called Cinderella Meets the Wolf Man. Mm-hmm. Classic. Everybody knows that. No, it wasn't. And then eventually I hired someone who had just come off Broadway. Where did I get her from, Jamie? Oh, from Jess Bing, one of my actors. Okay, one of the actors in Miller Place. Right, she had studied with her, and she just come off Starlight Express, and we had her for a year. But in all that, there was those early years in the high school, I saw the way Miss Jean worked with high school kids and even younger, and she was a good fit. She was a great fit, and so Jamie worked with me for 1 year. She did The Pajama Game, and then Jean came in the next year, and because she had done Fiddler at Take One, and I was doing Fiddler that next year. So and I saw the work that she did, and the rest was basically history. And we did the summer theater program, and eventually she cut down schools, and then eventually she's now in Bayport, Blue Point, and choreographs for them. Oh, wow. No, Bayshore, right? Not Bayport Blue, Bayshore, and choreographs for them. That was one of the 6 or 7 schools that she worked with until she cut down to 1. But then they made an offer that she couldn't refuse, kind of thing. Where that was all well and good. That was fine. Where there were multiple opportunities to work, whereas working in Mount Sinai, which is where I was at that time, because it didn't happen 4 years ago, but maybe 3 years ago, where I only had one gig to really offer. So they had more, and so she went there. And then interestingly enough, this past year, Jamie Chandler, who I had in 91 from Starlight Express, came in. I only produced the musical now in Mount Sinai. And so they hired a director and a choreographer. And the choreographer 25 years later is Jamie Chandler, the same woman that I had.
Imagine that. What a small world.
So we went full circle.
Man.
So that was basically the story. It was familiarity and seeing. And whenever I was a music person in Take One or at Theater 3, I would never go in just for the rehearsals where I was needed. Yeah. Like for the last week, to sit with the music director and make sure I'm playing the right parts. I would go in as often as possible because I would just sit and watch what the directors would do. Jeff Sanzel in Theater 3 and Ted Castrinos in Take One. And I would make decisions and learn just by watching what to do and what maybe not to do and what not to do.
Excellent.
That's the whole story. Chapter 9. Go.
So there are 2 stories. Again, I didn't want to make this interview about me. That's not the goal of this interview. That's not the goal.
I'm glad, because this is when you make it about you, then I get to sit and enjoy.
There are very much 2 stories that I wanted to make sure to tell you, and I don't know if I've ever told them to you. Not that they're terribly mind-blowing, but they're probably like the only 2 stories. You'll know why I brought them up in a second.
That you can tell on Zoom. Got it.
Right, indeed. No, again, I mean, I can only say it so much. Certainly we're talking about the most formative years of my life, and Mr. Kramer was a big part of making me who I am, which is why he's here, and I appreciate that. I can get poetic about that for a whole nother hour, but nobody wants to hear that. Except maybe Mr. Kramer,
No, I'm okay with it.
But one of the coolest moments in theater for me was this act of solidarity during a summer performance of Starmites. And um, during this part, I swear to you, I'm not saying this for anybody's benefit. There was this person who's obviously I'm not going to name. Uh, the person was on like this riser, and the poor person fell. Okay, and it's a he fell because I'm not going to get away with the story by not saying it. He fell into these lights, and he wasn't horsing around. The poor guy just like clanged down, and it's just like everybody's like, you know, what the heck was that? And we help him up. He's like, yeah, I'm good. And then like you say from the auditorium seats, you're just like, okay, we'll run it back, or you know, something like that. And so like the curtain opens and like the lights come on, and where he fell doesn't come on, and you're like literally like, all right, cut. And then you like hop up on stage, and you're like trying to like jimmy these lights and wondering, and I happen to be like right next to you, and you're saying like, man, these were just working. And one of the coolest things I have to say, like, I can't even look you in the eye and say it was funny because it was a shame. But it was one of the coolest moments because of this like solidarity amongst like 50 kids. And not everybody knows each other in those programs, with all due respect.
Right.
And
Mount Sinai Miller Place. Yeah.
Exactly. And nobody said a word that said like person X fell on those lights. And it was just kind of like, okay, they're not working right now. And I don't know if you fixed them later, like eventually it's sorted out. But as soon as like you left, I was like, this was awesome. You know what I'm saying? Like in my head, I'm just like, I love you all, you know?
So is that the end of the story? We lived happily.
I also
happily
will
ever
say,
after. Wait, I gotta give you because I'll forget it.
Please.
So I have to give you the companion piece to that.
Please.
As a third grade chorus teacher, I had 150 kids on risers every concert for all my days at the primary school. And whenever I would rehearse close to a concert, I would give this direction to my chorus. No matter, this goes back to me not playing piano well. If anything happens to me while I'm playing the piano, if I collapse, you keep singing. So one day we're doing All I Want for Christmas Is My Two Front Teeth.
Okay.
That's when I didn't do generic winter concerts. I did Christmas concerts because that's what I was hired to do.
Sure.
So my chorus is packed on risers, and we never had enough risers for 150 kids. So everybody was turned sideways, and they were sardines. Well,
Yeah.
Open up a sardine can. You know what the Grislings or Brislings, whatever they're called.
Yeah.
Okay. So as Kerry Griner, Mr. Griner, did name ring a bell?
Mr. Griner, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Griner is Santa Claus, and he's on a dolly that has a front of a sleigh. And Mr. Piccinini, okay, and he was a volunteer fireman, so he had a fireman's hat with antlers. And the backdrop for that song was Alfred E. Newman hanging from the battens on the primary school stage, missing his two front teeth. And right towards the end of the song, they're supposed to come on, and Santa's going to go up and plaster two front teeth where his gaff is, right in the front. As I'm playing, I see one kid on the second row do one of these and lean on the shoulder of the kid in front of him. And the kid in front of him starts going to get him off. And Piccinini and Griner, they're like right behind me because the audience is behind us and the piano's right in the center. And they stopped, and Mike went on and got the kid and took, because he fainted.
Yeah.
He fainted from the heat.
Yeah.
And pulled him out, and then came back, and we went and started the song again, or took it from measure 22 or whatever.
Right.
finished
Oh
the
my
show.
heavens.
So I guess that light, I don't remember that light story at all, but it works for me.
Yeah, it must have been a quick fix. Don't get me wrong, but it was this
So,
solidarity that just popped out of nowhere, which was it was really one of those moments where like I don't know, it was lovely.
yeah,
It
well,
was
when something would happen to an actor, even during rehearsal or during a show, I mean, my natural response was basically, I go up, are you okay?
yeah,
And does anybody know his or her part?
yeah, exactly. That's the
Because if
follow
they
up.
have,
Yeah,
you got to move on from these things. And I've unfortunately I've had a kid break her leg during a rehearsal, uh, and I felt really badly, but she didn't have a big part, but so we choreographed we reblocked the whole show for her to be in a wheelchair for the show. But I did have a kid in Miller Place who did go skiing on February break, and he had a part. He had a big part.
I remember that being the
And
warning. Boy, oh boy.
what?
I remember that being the warning. Like, don't do that.
Right. That was my February. Right, and don't cut your hair. And right, that was my right. Don't cut your hair
Don't
unless I
worry
know
about
about it.
that. Back then, I was preaching to the choir right there.
That's right. I mean, I just so you know, I haven't had my hair cut in how many? 30 years. 30 years. My hair, my regular hair, but it just falls out and doesn't grow. But he couldn't couldn't do his part. It might have been I might have been in Miller Place's Starmites. I'm not sure, but yeah, he came out. Oh no, he came out to do one of his songs with his crutch on and sang the song from stage right or stage left. My first fiddler. Oh, so was no that's another story. But I'm thinking of a kid named Chris. And okay, so it turns out that that was the best I could do for him at that moment. There's some things that are unavoidable. You try to compensate as best you can, and then of course the classic story is the Matt Matora story
Yes.
from Les Miserables.
Yeah.
You know, it's what happens sometimes. I felt bad, but I saw him after I heard the sound. You know about the barricade.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I heard the sound, but I didn't think anything of it. I didn't know. I had no idea. And then I went backstage at the end of the show and I said, "Are you okay?" And he just like fell into a puddle of tears. It was just like, you got to cut that out. But I mean, it was traumatic because he was being real in imaginary circumstances, and the guy who was supposed to catch him and be his buffer
Yeah.
didn't know.
No.
It was horrible.
Yeah.
But he didn't hurt himself.
Yeah.
Actually, he was different ever since that time. He's still the same way. He's still recovering from it. No, I'm kidding. So it's so interesting to have him take over. Take the role that I had for as long as he did when he got hired.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I could think of I don't know, but he's my friend, man. Like I'm biased.
Yeah.
We go. I think we fed off each other in the best way. One of the coolest things in the world was being Judas and Jesus with him. I mean, it was like Abbott and Costello when it had to be, and then it really
Laurel
was.
and Hardy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I try to think about doing that with anybody else in that theater program at age, and like, and if we're being honest about it, like if age weren't a factor, if like my point. At a time when Chucky was still there, I wouldn't have been ready for Chucky Loveliner. I wouldn't have been ready for something like Judas or something like that. That's more my point. But if like you're talking about people really like in their prime, for lack of a better term, but I don't like that. I still couldn't imagine doing that with anybody but Maddie. Genuinely one of the coolest experiences, and I'd like to think he feels the same. I still talk to him at least once a week. We just don't talk about, quite frankly, the Miller Place theater program, regrettably enough. But maybe that'll change after this interview, by all means.
I don't know. Matt and I used to talk during the summer once a year. We'd sit down at the Heritage Diner and just chew the fat, and that was always that was a nice moment for me too.
Yeah, I agree with that, man. Always learning from that. Speaking of that, oh shoot, that segues perfectly into my second story that I wanted to make sure you knew. All right, so in my life, and I only remember these because like they were so infrequent. There were 3 times in all the time I've known you where I swear on a stack of Bibles, I wouldn't say you were upset with me, but there were 3 moments where it was just like, Tom, what are you doing? And 2 out of the 3 times I just plain deserved it. They're not even stories. This 3rd time, we're doing, during Godspell, we're doing for the first time, those people are getting Maddie off the stage when he's dead, for lack of a term, and you tell me, Tom, go stand over there. And I genuinely believe, in my mind, it's just like Mr. Kramer wants me out of the way because I'm not helping, like I'm Judas, you know what I'm saying? And he just wants me out of the area. So I stay in the area you point to by sheer luck or laziness, okay? Like in my opinion, at that time, it's just like, you just want me out, And so I go to the place where you like motion to, but I go there, and this is before smartphones. So I'm like, just like standing there, I'm like pointing across the room, and I'm just like, what's up, everybody? And I think at one point I'm like literally taking the money in my wallet and making sure like all the 1s and 5s and 10s are together. And then suddenly I hear out of nowhere, I hear like, Tom, and I'm just like, what, And you're looking at me, and it's just like, pay attention or something like that. And I'm just like, oh wait, I'm part of the show, It was one of these things. It's not like you were wrong, but I just had no clue that you actually meant as like part of the stage production for me to stand over there. And so like literally I was doing anything but paying attention or being respectful. And suddenly I just got like this wake up call of cold water. It's like, what are you doing, man? Like you're killing me right now. And I was just like, oh.
Now you understand why I said at the beginning of this Zoom, I'm sorry for anything that I did to you while you were my student. I cover all bases.
Oh, man.
It's like Yom Kippur.
I'm sure I took about a mile. Good God.
Oh, God.
All right, Mr. Kramer, we're going to start wrapping up real quick. One of the things, I don't want to call it a regret because while we don't speak often, when we do, I do treasure it. Part of me is bummed out, though, that back when we were seeing each other consistently, we didn't, although we had our moments, we didn't quite talk music as much as we probably could have, and certainly should or could now. With this in mind, I'm not usually one for kitschy, like, 2-word answers, but I just wanted to know. First
2-word answers from me? Are you kidding? Holy mackerel. There it is. Holy mackerel. I pass. Keep going.
First concert you've ever been to?
Say it again?
First concert you've ever been to?
First concert I've ever been to would have been my own at Greenwich House.
Yeah?
The first exposure to fine arts probably would have been when I won the Lincoln Center Award while I was in high school. And every high school in New York City designated one person to get it. And what you did was you got a free performance to whatever company worked in every building in Lincoln Center. So I saw New York City Ballet. I saw the New York City Opera Company do something in English. I went to at then Philharmonic Hall. So I would think those are the first ones.
Mm.
My parents didn't take me to concerts.
Most
So,
recent concert you've been?
most recent concert I've been to. Concert. Well, we have subscriptions to the New York Philharmonic, so it would have been last season's last concert, which I think was Beethoven's ninth
Beautiful.
with the New York Philharmonic.
First album you ever bought with your own money?
Oh God, I don't know. Uh, first album, not a CD, huh? Okay, no, I'm kidding. First album. Oh, well, album. If that means it's a 33 long playing. Wouldn't be the. God, I don't know. I don't know. Oh, first album. Oh, wait, I got it.
Hey,
I got it.
there
Came
you
to
go.
me. The complete collection of Beethoven's 9 symphonies. I still have it. It's in my bedroom or in my room behind my bedroom. Bruno Walter and the CBS Orchestra. And it came with a booklet. It's in a black case and opened up, and it had all 9 symphonies. I bought it from Corvettes. You wouldn't know what that is, but
No, I wouldn't know that.
no,
But then
there we
again,
go.
the place I bought my first album doesn't exist anymore either. I bought Red Hot Chili Peppers' Californication. I was in 5th grade. It was my own money. I went to Coconuts with my father.
Coconuts, okay.
Yeah. And so we get there, and I don't know if I remember it because it's the first album I ever bought with my own money or because of what happened next.
Your father hit you.
Man, so we get up to the counter, Mr. Kramer, and I have this new album, and it's only about the 5th one I'm ever gonna own, period. But it's the first one that's literally just like, here's my $15, you know? And I'm in 5th grade, and this album is, the Chili Peppers are not, like saints by any stretch, but this album is not like parental advisory or anything like that. Like it's literally just like, here I am, like this is what I'd like. And to this day, I think it's a great album, but that's neither here nor there. I get up to the counter and this dude, and I'm convinced that if I passed him on the street today, I would know, This dude says to my dad, right? All right. So, and this is probably the dude's probably 16. It's probably his first job. Like, what hill is this to die on, bro? Like he says to my dad, he's just like, can he have this? He like checks it with him. And my dad's the man. I love my dad. But my dad goes like, why? Like what? Like suddenly he's like paying attention. He's like, he like picks up the album. He's like examining it, And so finally, my dad, to his credit, like doesn't overthink it, but he's just like, yeah, you can have it. But like rest assured, like we get home, and first of all, look, if looks could kill, like that guy be gone. But we get back home, and I pop in the album because I love that era of time in my life because when you buy an album and throw it on right away, like now,
Right.
I download stuff and it's just like I'll listen to it next week,
Right.
which I hate, like 15-year-old Tom would hate that aspect of 31-year-old Tom. Really would. But I pop it in right away, and suddenly you see my dad like kind of like out in the hall, just like listening in, and I'm just like, at this point I'm getting a kick out of it, and eventually he pops in and he's like, yeah, it's good, and I'm just like, yeah, it's good, and he's like checking out the album, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's cool that you're interested. And I remember I pretty much said it just like this. I was just like, it's cool that you're interested. I think they say MFer in the first song, and then they say like Rise Above Hell in one of the songs. But I think other than that, it's pretty clean. And my dad's like, no, that's not why I'm looking. And I'm just like, all right.
Yeah, right, sure. Very funny.
Yeah, that's splendid. So I mean, again, I don't know if I remember that as my first album because it's my first album, or just because of that Coconuts guy forever imprinting, himself on my mind. Mr. Kramer, I've done with you. I've probably done 7 shows, 7, 8 shows. And if I had to pick a favorite out of those, I couldn't do it. So I'm not going to be foolish enough to ask you a question so bluntly that says like, "Do you have a favorite show?" You know, but like, are there maybe like a set of a couple that are especially kind of near and dear to you? You can expand on that if you want, or just kind of leave it alone.
Yeah, the shows that after I felt comfortable, after I was hired and worked a couple of years as director, and be able to and was able to make the choices without sort of following in anybody's footsteps or making community comfortable,
Yeah,
is finding pieces that uh, are catalysts for discussions and exposing people to new things, build on where they are, and take them to a new place. Uh, in terms of your shows, uh,
oh,
I'm gonna give you the whole list because it's really long.
yeah,
My typical answer, and it is absolutely true. Whatever play I'm working on at the moment, whatever musical I'm working on at the moment, is my favorite because it's an immersive experience. So it's as close to me as one of my own compositions, because basically what I'm doing is I'm manipulating the elements of the art form, which a painter uses paint and color and shape. A musician uses sound and notes and timbre and whatever. And a theater person uses blocking, costume, lighting, and things like the sound design, uh, props, whatever. I mean, for us to have in ragtime the car, it lent some value to that production as opposed to a cardboard walk across of a car.
yeah.
You know, so that becomes a joy to me. And as I said, my soul is engulfed by the experience. So it's any play that I'm doing, but plays that are of value, that are catalysts, as I said, for conversations, are important to me. I would say my fiddlers are very special to me, because it's not that it's Jewish, but certainly it's my tradition, and it's my people's history. But it's anybody who is an other person in a society. And ragtime was interesting to do because it was the next chapter.
Yeah.
It was the group that went to Chicago, or however you pronounced it, Laser Wolf, says at the end. It's the people that came to America, and it's 1906, and it was a Jewish surge into the Lower East Side. So ragtime was important. Tommy was very special to me because of the issues of trauma and finding oneself. And that last scene where the three Tommies mold, or the two Tommies, the teenage one and the younger one, mold behind the adult, or the older young adult. We are all our previous selves, and then the person we are in the present. Les Miserables was special because we were the first ones to be able to do it within the area of New York, and it was Ray's ticket to an experience on Broadway, and it was my ticket to be able to see the last full-blown show because his parents were on a cruise, so they couldn't go, and their parents were given tickets to the show, so they gave it to me to go with Hillary. And then I was able to walk into the final, by invitation only, show of Les Mis, which was only done from in front of people who had been in the show for all the years that it was in. There was no public there. And so all the 40 teenagers that were doing that final addendum, because Cameron McIntosh came out, and after he said, "I want everybody to applaud for the star of the show," when he pointed to the turntable, he said, "I want you not to be sad about us closing Les Miserables. We are passing it on to the next generation." And then Ray came out and was an ensemble member, and they did a 15-minute collage, or montage, I should say, of the songs from Les Miserables. So I was able to witness that. I actually whenever I go into that theater, the Imperial Theater, Hillary knows and I know and she saw it on a monitor out in the lobby, but I stood on just a wooden chair right by the staircase going up to the balcony so I get a better look because everybody was standing on their feet at that time.
Yeah.
And that was incredible. Sweeney Todd, to be able to talk about vengeance is self-destructive and teach lessons like that were all very special. Certainly, well, Ragtime is up there because of its story and that idea of the American flag at the very end of the show, after being that isolated red, white, and blue at the very beginning, to integrate into that new family, that new nuclear family with a Jew, a WASP, a black child, a white child. If only America could get its act together and try to make that a reality. That was special. But I will tell you that, and I've replicated Sweeney in Mount Sinai. I've replicated a Godspell. I did Spam a lot when I was first hired because they had already booked the show. So I was that's the one that I was brought in to do. I did a Joseph as an advisor for a young director there who was only there 1 year and left after that. But recently I've been given, when I was in Miller Place and I was told the very last year that I wasn't going to be able to do all the jobs that I had done in the past, I then said, well, then I'm going to do Almost Maine and I'm going to do a straight play. And that's what I did when I was hired. And that was something that came from outer space. I don't know where it came from. But the last year, I think I did a musical. I also did a reading of the Laramie Project. And that was very special because of its content. In Mount Sinai, I do a fall play, and up until 2 years ago, and I did a musical. So the plays I've done is I did Laramie Project, I did 12 Angry Jurors, I did a very intimate version of Our Town because I had seen it done in a black box theater at the Greenwich House Theater School by David Cromer, who is a phenomenal director as well as writer. I saw it with Michael Shanahan, and that was pretty interesting. Shannon, rather, and that was great as the narrator. And so I did an Our Town where I didn't drop out the lights. If you know, do you know the show, the 3 acts of the show? Okay. I left the lights on and I didn't use spotlights, and I was able to block it in a way that the audience was part of the show, so to speak.
Oh, wow.
And then only in the last act when death appears, and it's about life. It's about everyday life. The second act is about love and marriage, and the third act is about death. And the story is the basic premise of the show is you better stop and smell the roses because life is finite. Is basically what the punchline is. And so then I only darkened the audience when I went to the death act. And I had different levels because in Mount Sinai they have a platform, a pit orchestra that drops down below the stage and above the stage, and it's, you can elevate it. But the other shows I've done also is, and then they came for me, Remembering the World of Anne Frank, which used archival videos of survivors. And one of the survivors is a woman named Eva Schloss, who survived the camps along with her mother and was a friend of Anne Frank's and had the same kinds of experience. She was in hiding and betrayed almost the same day as Anne Frank. And remember, and it's her story from her Holocaust interviews. And so the actors on stage play the teenage life of Anne Frank and Eva Schloss with her family. It's really Eva Schloss's story. And they interact with the video that includes her and another survivor. And it turns out that Eva Schloss's mother married Otto Frank after the war. And so Eva Schloss became Otto Frank's stepdaughter. And then I didn't know this, but the week after the show at the Museum of Jewish Heritage down by Battery Park, Eva Schloss was being flown in from London where she lived. She had, yes, from London, and they were performing the show. So I quickly got tickets, and I recognized her. She was sitting in the row behind me. I was like in second or third row. And I went up to her, and her big complaint was that nobody knew the story of my brother, which is, she wrote a book called Eva's Story, and her brother was killed. He was a painter, and his story, and so the play told that story. And I went up to her and I said, I want you to know I just performed. And then they came to me, Remembering the World of Anne Frank. And I want you to know that my actors and about 400 people in my community heard your brother's story last weekend. So she thanked me for that, and then
Wow.
that's the end of that story. But then this year I'm picking out plays that I can do that are virtual friendly, Zoom friendly, and one play that I'm strongly contemplating is called Fires in the Mirror, and it's about the Crown Heights riots in 1991 when a Hasidic Rebbe's motorcade got into an accident that pushed one of his cars into a black kid and killed this kid on the sidewalk. And then there was a lot of friction between the Hasidic Jews and the blacks of Crown Heights. And in revenge for that death, there was a murder of an Australian Jew who was visiting America to learn. He was murdered that night and stabbed to death. And there were 4 days of riots in New York City that were uncontrollable. And eventually, and this is a story that was made like Laramie Project by interviews of people that were involved in those 4 days. And it was really Reverend Al Sharpton's was a leader of the Black community at the time, and so these are monologues. So that pick is a strong one for this year. And then 2 years ago, I did 26 Pebbles, which was a play of monologues and scenes about the killing of the 26 people in Sandy Hook in Newtown, Connecticut. So I think the plays that I've done have all been so. I mean, I did Trap last year, which was a science fiction. Well, not science. Yeah, it's like a mystery. It was really good. Kids had a great time. Audience had a great time. It was a play within the play, and the play that was within the play was exactly what was happening in the auditorium at our time, and what happened in the past 40 years before, or 16 years before. No, it was about 40, in the 40s rather, had 241 people in the audience or in the theater that night when everybody passed out and were brought back to life or died or whatever. And it turns out that in my first performance, there were literally 241 people in my audience, including my cast. It was like that. It was like a mind-blowing moment.
That's insane. Wow.
So, I mean, it's not a highlight of my life, but that was good. But it's these meaningful ones that are catalysts to try to go back to what you alluded to before, a desire to teach. Where that desire came from, I have no idea. But as I said before, also, I have a blog that, in a sense, is a teaching thing. And then I did Hebrew school for almost over 20 years for young teenagers. People becoming bar mitzvah and maybe older. I did a Hebrew high. So it's just what I do.
Yeah. Well, speaking for myself, and I know for many, I'm really glad it did find you, even if we don't know its origins.
It's like Dear Evan Hansen, I've been found. I will be found. Very, very special. Go ahead.
No, I mean, your presence in my life has been very important, and certainly I want to thank you for that. And again, it means that you're here tonight, and I just want to thank you for your time.
My pleasure, my honor.
Anything else? Anything else you want to bring up before we call it?
No, stay well. I like the beard. And
Thank
actually,
you very
and I
much.
will tell you, when I was younger, I wrote a beard book about how to grow a beard.
How to grow it, baby.
Hillary just screamed in from the kitchen. Please don't say anything. But it really had it included sleeping. Okay, I must keep my reputation intact.
There you
But
go.
obviously,
I'll call
you're
you
really.
later. Yeah.
I'll leave that for the next Zoom in 40 years.
Yeah, fair enough. I can't wait for that. Baby boy, we'll be down to
Yeah.
you.
I'll be deaf, dumb, and blind by then.
You bet. We got a pinball machine somewhere.
There you go.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, ears of corn, thank you so much for joining myself and Mr. David Kramer. This has been the Corn Chronicles, and this has certainly been a tremendous time. I wish you all the best always. Have a good one.
Be well.